G'day guys, and welcome back to episode 9 of the Daily Discomfort Podcast. We're lucky enough today to be here with PJ Coorey, who is a husband, father, business coach, and an entrepreneur. PJ, what can you tell us about yourself? Obviously, we've met through the gym, through you bringing your community to the Run Club community that time. Can you just give the listeners a bit more of an insight into who you are, what you do for a living?
For sure. I appreciate the opportunity to come on, Michael, and have a chat to your audience. It's always great getting an opportunity to come on and share. But yeah, so a bit about me. So I'm currently 27, as you mentioned, husband and father. It's one of the most important things in my life at the moment. We just had a 6-week-old boy. And I say we, but I didn't necessarily have the baby myself. Obviously, my wife did that part, and I experienced the journey. And even how it was funny. I've always wanted 3 or 4 kids myself, and she's always wanted 3 or 4. And halfway through labor, she was like, "I'm never having sex with you again." And I was like, "Totally fair, totally understand." But afterwards, now she's like, "Oh yeah, I would love to have some more kids." So fortunately, we're talking about having another one soon, and it's been an absolute blessing. But just a very quick rundown of my story. I got out of high school when I was 18, had no idea what I wanted to do coming out of school. I read a book by Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because my dad gave that to me when I was 16 or 17. So I always knew I wanted to become an entrepreneur of some sort. I wanted to have a business. Just had no idea what that business was going to be at that moment. So got into real estate, thought that was a really good way a good career path to go down in the beginning. And about 2.5 years into that journey, that's where I realized I really didn't want to have to work 70, 80 hours a week for the rest of my life, because I looked at my boss, and my boss had all the shiny things. He had the nice car, the nice properties, a good, nice bank account, but he didn't necessarily look after his health as much as maybe what I would have liked to. And he didn't necessarily have the relationships with the people that he cared about, because he was always working. So he didn't have what I would call now holistic success. He had financial success, but I wanted the holistic success. So instead of just complaining about my situation, I went and pivoted. I went and did something about it, and I started looking into entrepreneurship properly. I started looking into the online business world. I started looking into affiliate marketing. I just tried a bunch of different things. And I think if you were to touch or take a blood test of mine back when I was 18 or 19, you would have found very high levels of arrogance. I thought I knew everything, like we always do when we're that young. And I got humbled by it. I didn't have really any success. I lost a lot of money, and a lot of money back then was probably like 5 to 10 grand, which when you're making 30, 40 grand a year, that's like a quarter of your salary. So I lost a bunch of cash and realized I probably need some help. And that's when I started going to networking events and just meeting new people. I was fortunate enough to get connected to somebody who had an incredible lifestyle. He was financially independent. He could travel, and to be fair, I'd met other people like this, but he was the first person I met that had that holistic success. He was a full-time dad. His wife was at home as well. He had the ability to travel. He could buy the fancy stuff, sure, but he also had a really healthy relationship with his wife. And that was something that I was wanting, right? If I was going to have a relationship with my wife, I wanted to make sure it was a healthy one. And I find what most people do is we spend so much of our time trading our time for money. We're going to a job, and sometimes we love it, and that's great, but we give our leftover time to the people we love the most. And that wasn't something that I was okay with doing. So when I saw his lifestyle, I thought, hey, this is a great guy to have in my circle. And even Michael's community has been super helpful just with networking with like-minded people. And I knew that I needed to do that. So built a friendship with this guy. He took me under his wing, started coaching me, showing me how it worked. Took 5 years. I got into the e-commerce space, online business space with consumables. So we created a $1 million company. Took a little while to do that. But then eventually got it to a point where we didn't have to work a job anymore. So we could survive off the reoccurring income stream from that. And now my wife and I's priority is looking after our son. That's the number one thing that we want to do. Looking into homeschooling, we're not big fans of what the school system teaches, so we would love the opportunity. And we might not do the homeschooling ourselves. We might get a private educator in, but that's why we wanted the resources, so we could choose the way we spend our time, live life through our values. And now we also run an international mentoring program as well, where we can mentor people one-on-one and help them to achieve similar things with their life. And I guess that, brings us to where we are now, Michael.
I think that's a pretty accurate depiction of what you're doing. For context, too, to everyone listening, I was at your event last night, and on the point of creating the freedom that you have for yourself, it's a challenging perspective for people to hold for themselves when they haven't seen it before, right? Now, something that was, I guess, more alarming, if we say it, is some of the stats that you'd actually put up on the slideshow at this event. Like when you looked at cost of living, it was funny as when you did, the comparison of what dark chocolate used to cost versus what it costs now really spiked up. The other thing was housing. So, buying a house for $59,000 X amount of years ago versus $959,000 now. So there's an obvious choice for people to make if they want to get with the times more and being able to prosper and being able to have more freedom, being able to have the choice to get a private educator for their kid. For some people, they'd be like, what? Like, I'm paying for this and that. Obviously, if you're used to living in a certain way, working in a certain way, one of the other alarming things that came into it was when you put it up on the display, how much time we actually spend living our life, doing what we enjoy doing. And it was a fraction of what was actually up there. I wish I could give you guys a visual now. It was like all these little circles across the board, and there was not much time spent unless you halved your screen time and you pretty much spent less time working. You found out a way to bring in more income, and there was less of a cost for your time to actually make that money. And when you showed us Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrants, basically you're moving from being someone who is self-employed or employed by someone else to someone who is a business owner who has people working from them, or you're making investments there too. So I think it's not only impressive, it's admirable. And I think a lot of people would love to be in the position that you guys are in, but you've obviously worked your butt off to get there. I would say it's, not all smooth sailing. A couple of questions that I do have on that note, though, across the journey, there's obviously been challenges in business. It's not like you're an overnight success and you just made $1 million business overnight. What were some of your guiding values and beliefs along the way? And as an extension of that, how do you think this influenced your ability to still become successful without burning out, without letting go of your health, your fitness, without your relationship breaking down? And not only, looking after a little kid now, but you've also got 2 pets. Like, I mean, you're a fur father as well. So you've got other things going on in your life. Like, how did you hold it all together? And how would you?
Well, I mean, on the pet thing, I love gadgets.
Yep.
So I love my pets, but I've got an automatic feeder. I've got an automatic water thing. I've got an automatic robot vacuum cleaner that also mops occasionally.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for gadgets because I want to simplify my life so I can focus on what actually matters.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always tried to do. We've even got an automatic ball thrower coming in the mail soon from Amazon.
Yeah.
So my dog will be able to go outside, pick up the ball, put it in the little machine, and it'll throw it for him. And that's not because we don't want to walk our dog. Of course, we're going to be good parents. We're going to walk our dog, but we can't walk him all the time.
Hey, man, I've seen Giuseppe at the run club before. I know you take that guy.
Runs. Yeah. He's got so much energy. He's got small legs, but he's got a ton of energy. So to answer your question, probably a bunch come to mind. The most important one was this idea of becoming more outcome focused instead of passion driven, because all throughout our schooling, I'll talk about my perspective. In my schooling career, my teachers and my family always told me, PJ, you need to find something that you love to do, because if you love what you do, you'll never have to work a day in your life. Now, I thought this was great because I love video games. I love Minecraft. I love RuneScape. I love playing COD Zombies. I mean, I love these games. So I thought maybe I can stream and I could just be like a PewDiePie or a Mr. Beast, play video games all day, every day, and make money doing that and make a living from it. And fast forward a couple months, I realized that wasn't going to be a reality to me. I might seem confident now, but back when I started, I didn't have confidence. I didn't speak clearly. I would mumble a lot of my words. I had a self-image that was in the drain, and I would just do drugs and alcohol to try to mask that. So I thought, okay, well, that's not going to be something I can do. And then I thought, well, I didn't even think this actually. I just got into real estate because my dad said that's something which would be a good career for me. So I listened to his advice and I went and did that. It wasn't until I got introduced to my mentor who said that most successful people aren't passion focused, they're more outcome focused. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, what a successful person would do is they would get clear on the outcome that they want, and then they would reverse engineer a process and they would find a way to achieve it. And he gave this example. He said, there's a successful baseball player over in the US. I don't know if you've heard this, Michael, but I think it's a great story. Successful baseball player, and he's come up to retirement day, and a reporter is having a bit of a joke, bit of a play, and she asks him, hey, what's your favorite sport? And Michael, if I was to ask you, if you're a professional baseball player, and I ask you, hey, what's your favorite sport? What are you expecting the answer to be?
You would assume it's baseball, right?
You would assume baseball.
Yeah.
Correct. He didn't say baseball.
Yeah.
He said track and field.
Yeah.
And the reporter was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean track and field? You've played baseball for the last 6-7 years. You've done very well. You've become very successful. Why did you play baseball if track and field is your main sport you'd like to play? He said, well, for me to be able to look after my family, to be able to provide and to become rich and wealthy, I can't do that doing track and field. But I can do it in baseball. So now that I've retired from baseball and I've set up my life, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do track and field for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So he had this goal of like, okay, I know what I want. I'm going to sacrifice so that I can achieve what I want. And then I'm going to live my passion on the back end.
Yeah.
Sometimes what we do is we say, well, I'm super passionate about photography, so I'm going to go into photography. And then as soon as you attach money to your passion, you can lose the passion for it. That's what a lot of people are doing. So for me, I sat down with my mentor. I said, hey, this is what I want. This is my goal. I want to be a full-time dad. I want to be able to travel a lot more. I want to be able to work out. Like, I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I love going to the gym. I absolutely hate running. No offense, Michael, but I do it because of the way it makes me feel afterwards.
Yeah.
Cardio is definitely something I'm working on.
Yeah.
But I do that. And this probably goes into part of your question. I always prioritize my health as I was building my business. And as I was doing anything, because if I am not physically active, if I'm not looking after my health, then I'm also not looking after my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm worth a lot more money from the neck up. I'm actually worth like basically $10 an hour from the neck down. But if I was a tradie and I had maybe a carpentry or if I was a sparky, I might be worth about $100 to $150 from the neck down.
Yeah.
But from the neck up, we are unlimited, right? Because we're in an informational economy. So if I am not working out, if I'm not doing the saunas, and you don't have to go really into it, but as long as you're doing something like a physical exercise, it's going to make you feel better. It's going to give you confidence. If I looked in the mirror and I wasn't happy with what I saw, that's going to affect my self-image. That's going to affect my confidence. And that's going to affect how I show up for my wife, for my kid, for my pets, and everybody else who I care about in my life. So I don't understand the point of going out and making a crap ton of money if it means that you need to also sacrifice your health in the process to get that. I look at them as if you can work on holistic success, you're going to have the ability to or focus on health. You're going to be able to build a more successful business or career or whatever it is that you are working on.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And have you seen that across like some of the people in your circles that you've met, maybe past mentors that even when you mentioned earlier, the mentor who was in real estate or the manager, the boss that you had, and, it looked good, nice house, nice car, big bank account. Was that someone that looked after their health and fitness, or was that someone that let it go? Or is there any other examples maybe of someone who had all the money and the bells and whistles, but on the inside, they weren't feeling too good and maybe they weren't looking good as well?
Actually, a business coach. I remember going to an event and this was a very wealthy man. He would be getting close to like the $500 million stage at this point. And he was super into crypto and he had probably 40, 50 different companies. And I looked up to him for a season because I thought he had everything that I wanted. But then the more I listened to him, the more I realized he was looking sort of behind his back all the time in case he was getting backstabbed by somebody that he knew. And that wasn't really a life that I wanted. And he didn't really speak about health and fitness. He was always, on the road. He never really saw his kid. He never actually saw his kids. He was literally always, flying somewhere, going interstate or international. I just looked at his life and I thought I wanted it in the beginning because he had the Lamborghinis, plural. He had the jets, plural.
Yeah.
Like he had that. And I thought that's what I wanted. But when I look at somebody's success, I want to see, do you have fruit on the tree?
Yeah.
If I wanted to play baseball, guess what? I'm going to go and get a baseball coach. If I want to run faster, I'll go get a running coach. If I want to learn jiu-jitsu, I'm not going to go get someone who plays tennis and get them to teach me how to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm going to find someone who is really good in that field and allow them to teach me. And where this becomes a gray area is in business and it's in life, because maybe they look like they have all the bells and whistles, but then you look under the surface and you start to see that, they're onto their fourth marriage. They're not actually that healthy. That's like the second time in the last 3 months they've gone into hospital for a surgery. They actually really don't eat the best food. And you keep seeing, you're like, actually, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So again, when I met my mentor, he had the health. He was a CrossFit, cult leader, loved CrossFit. He had everything going for him, which is why I was willing to listen to his advice, because I would have happily swapped places with him. I would have traded my shoes for his.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I think a really important point to bring up there as well is, whether you're a guy or a girl listening, is how do you differentiate the difference between having a good mentor and maybe someone that you should pass on? You mentioned that for a season that you looked up to this person, but then you realized, maybe what they have isn't actually what I want to have. I feel like with social media now, if you're looking on Instagram, if you're on TikTok, if you're jumping onto YouTube, there's a lot of different advice out there. Everybody else is obviously spitting out their own biases towards things. We had Andy on the podcast yesterday, who is a provisional psychologist, and we talked about, the difference in your Andrew Tates, and then on the opposite end, your guys who are just super obsessed with mental health and always talking about emotions and feelings. And you get this, massive spectrum across here. What advice would you give to someone who is trying to find a mentor or a podcast to listen to, a book to read, but maybe they aren't as able to discern the information and know how to apply it to themselves? They don't know how to take it with a grain of salt like you have when you saw the mentor doesn't have what I realistically want to have. And it could be as simple as a bit more self-awareness, but is there any advice that you would give in that area about picking the right, education for yourself or the right mentorship?
Most important thing is that they have results in the area that you want to work on. This might not be politically correct, but I'm not going to take advice about my health and fitness of someone who's overweight.
Hey, that's actually what came up before, is that in the past when I've been to a doctor, funnily enough, I've had to have an iron infusion a couple of times. And this was a few years ago. And I went in, and again, I don't look at someone who's overweight and go, you're disgusting. Like, I don't want to. It's just like, no. Wait, you're someone that's like in charge or informing me about my health, and you're not like in good health yourself. Like, you lose respect immediately for the person if they haven't got the result themselves.
Exactly right. So at least if it's a mentor, and you've got to work out, I always recommend people sit down and they do a personal development plan. So I can recommend books and podcasts. I've got hundreds of books that I've read, but I wouldn't recommend one because I don't know who I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
And this is where having when you're an influencer and you're on Instagram and even podcasts, I find what you do is you have a width. You get in touch with a lot of people all at once. But when I can sit down one-on-one with somebody, I get depth. I can make an impact more in one person's life rather than the width. Both are important. There's definitely a place for both. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. But I would recommend someone sit down and they go and do a personal development plan. And all that would look like, this is from John C. Maxwell. He says, you sit down, you put a line down the page, and on one side you write weaknesses, and the other side you write strengths. And you start with all of your strengths and you list them. Okay. And maybe there's 10, 15 or 20, and get an intimate partner or a friend, someone who knows you really well, to have a look and add to it, because there's usually things that you will miss. And then write down your weaknesses. Okay. And you'll start to see some areas which you should probably focus on. Now, when you look at all your weaknesses and all your strengths, I wouldn't recommend saying, okay, I'm going to work on all 15 of these weaknesses right now, because you will overwhelm yourself and you probably won't do anything. But what I would do is circle 2, maybe max 3, and focus on those 3. And if those 3, for me, 3 years ago, my biggest one was communication skills. I knew that was a very important skill for me to develop in the line of work that I was in. And I think any line of work, I mean, you could be the best engineer in the world and make a lot of money, but you won't make that much money if you don't know how to communicate effectively. So communication is always something that I am big on. So that was my big one that I circled. So I started reading books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, or Cues by Vanessa Van Edwards. And by doing that personal development plan, I'm not just sporadic, because there's so many people out there recommending books and podcasts, and they're all amazing, but it might just not be relevant to where you're at that point in time. That's where having a mentor who knows you well, who knows what you want long-term, they are able to recommend you books based on that personal development plan, and listen to podcasts based, if you want to work on your finances, if you're not happy where you are financially, pick up some books on financial intelligence, right? Dave Ramsey did a great podcast with Chris Williamson the other day, which I think is one of the best financial podcasts I've seen in a very long time. But that personal development plan gives you a blueprint that you can then work from. So I'd probably sit down and go through that and make sure you have somebody look over it, because they can see usually some more of the blind spots, which we miss.
I did not expect that response, and that honestly far exceeded what I was. I'm not sure what I had in mind, but that's so valuable. I've actually got to just me taking notes here. That was a really good one. I think there's a lot of value within that, and I'm going to be getting onto that later this evening. You did mention actually that podcast last night. Did you say it was David Ramsey?
Yeah, so Dave Ramsey, so he's a successful financial advisor over in America. And he sat down on I believe it's Modern Wisdom.
The podcast Chris Williamson. Yeah, cool. So just anyone who wants to listen to that, go check that out. I think I've actually got it in my notes from the event last night too, so I might even just post it up in the show notes or the description. Now, moving on from the last points there, you did touch on how you've always maintained your health and fitness. That's kind of been a key point, no matter how you're developing in business. How do you feel like gym and BJJ influenced your ability to build a business, be an entrepreneur, but even just show up for your partner and now your child as a man? How did the gym, how did fitness, how did a combat sport help you in that way?
It's been a habit for my entire life. Up until when I started, I probably would have been 13 when I went to the gym for the first time. And you get to a point where you go to the gym, and you know this, Michael, you wake up, you don't feel like going to the gym, but you know you're going to go to the gym because I've got enough reps, meaning I've said to myself enough, hey, tomorrow I'm going to go to the gym. And I know, because I've got a track record of following through on that decision, that the next day comes and it would, very rarely would I miss the gym on that day. Okay. Now, I have plenty of times where I say, hey, tomorrow I'm going to go for a run. And I don't follow through on that decision. Because I don't want to go for a run. That's not something that I enjoy doing by any means. But I trust myself to get to the gym, because it's something which I might not feel like doing, but I know exactly how I'm going to feel once I've been to the gym. So I always make that decision. And it makes me feel better mentally. It makes me feel better emotionally. I always know if I'm feeling stressed, if I'm feeling overwhelmed and I feel like the day is going to crap, there's not much that a good amount of food, good quality food, good sleep, and a good workout, there's not much that doesn't fix in my life. Right? I still feel stressed, although I don't have to work a job anymore and I spend most of my time with my wife and my kid. I still feel stressed. I can still feel very overwhelmed. I've started to view overwhelm quite differently though. I've started to believe that, and I believe this, overwhelm can be a good thing, because if you're getting overwhelmed, it means you're challenging your comfort zone, which is great. You are not going to get anywhere in life if you're not getting outside the comfort zone. And I would say there's a good diagram where you've got the comfort zone in the middle, which is what you want to avoid. Just on the outskirt of that, you've got your stretch zone. Okay, you're stretching, you're setting goals, but they're stretchable goals. And then you've got the panic zone and the stress zone. You don't want to get into that zone, because that's when you get into the burnout world and you keep pushing. But then again, man, like I chat to some people and like, oh man, like I'm so burnt out, right? I'm like, oh, okay, like, what have you been doing? Dude, I'm like working 20 hours a week, living at home with my parents. I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Like, what exactly are you doing that's burning you out? Now, I hear that. I try my best not to judge it, because then I speak to a couple that I'm actually mentoring who have 6 kids,
Yeah.
right? They both work full-time jobs and they're building a side business as well at the same time. And all their kids are in sports, right? I'm like, I'm not that busy, right? And then I hear someone who's working 20, 30 hours a week complaining about it. All it shows me is that their capacity is low.
Yeah.
And they're not willing to get outside their comfort zone enough to expand the comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that's, if anybody's wanting to build a business, or you're wanting to get better goals and you're wanting to achieve more in your fitness goals, it's just you're not willing to push that extra mile. I had a personal trainer at the gym where you train, and he said that the reason why I wasn't progressing, meaning I wasn't, putting on weight, I wasn't getting leaner, was because I was stopping when it got hard in my workouts. So I would do 10 and I'd probably have 2 or 3 reps left in the bag.
Yeah.
And he said, you don't want 2 or 3 reps left in the bag. He said, all of your results that you're wanting that you're not currently getting are in those final 2 or 3 reps, where you start literally getting the shakes.
Yeah.
He said, that's how, when you get the shakes and you almost can't pull it down when you're doing a lat pull down, he said, that's where you're building the muscle. That's the strength that you want those results. You got to keep pushing when it gets hard and go to a failure.
Yeah.
And it's the same in business. It's the same in every area of your life, is pushing. So when I can do hard things like that, then when I come home and I can be with my wife, be with my kid, it's easy to do the dishes. It's easy to do the chores. It's easy to say, hey, babe, what can I help with? I can show up for them because I've done hard stuff that day already.
Yeah.
Doing the dishes, although mentally it might be like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's like, I'm just going to do it because I've had a good start to the day.
Yeah. Mate, there's one thing that I love about fitness and training, and it's that you can probably use it for so many different analogies to life and business. And in regards to what you've said there, it came to mind that obviously we're talking about training in a certain proximity to failure. So to the point that you're actually going to failure at times, and you can do that all the time. So when it comes to training periodization, there's a few different coaches in that I follow. Now, the idea is that if you do tons and tons of sets, but they're not exactly at a higher intensity, you can actually build up a lot of fatigue, and it can actually be less productive. It's like, if you're going to go in there, you may as well go in there and do less sets, but hit it with a higher intensity. And why I bring this up is, did you ever see in the way that you've built up a business, it wasn't that you're just trying to do all the different things. It wasn't that your idea of success was working 18 hours in the day. It's like, no, I'm just going to set these targets for the day, these things that I need to get done, or maybe this time frame, but I'm going to give it everything once I'm in there. I'm going to work as hard as I can in that time, and I'm going to earn that rest after it. Is that where you're at mentally, or?
I'll give you an analogy. So let's say you have a tree outside your house. I don't care how small it is. I don't care how big it is, but every single day you get an axe.
Yeah.
And you go out to that tree and you swing 5 times at that tree. Not 50, not 500 times, not 5,000, just 5 times. And then you go back inside. And then the next day you go out and you swing 5 times. Okay. If you keep doing that repetitively, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I was going to say, based on how hard I'm hitting the tree, if I'm hitting it not with a lot of intensity versus a lot of intensity, it's either going to take me a longer amount of time or a shorter amount of time.
Totally. But what will happen eventually? The tree will fall down.
Oh, it'll chop. Yeah.
It doesn't matter how big it is. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how small it is. It doesn't matter how strong the tree. It doesn't even matter how much I hit.
Yeah.
Eventually, if I do 5 times every day, that tree is going to fall down. So if that's true, what I worked at is I said, cool, what can I do every single day? 5 things that will lead me towards my goals.
Yeah.
And I figured out what my 5 things were. One was reading. One was listening to a podcast. And then I had 3 others, which were attributed to my business being successful. And then every day I just did that. Now, some days I did a hell of a lot more than that, right? I went balls to the wall, as some people would say, and I just went freaking really hard, and I did a ton in that day. And some days I just did those 5 things.
Yeah.
Right. But I did those 5 things consistently. And this is why, if you want results in the gym, if I want a 6-pack, I need to eat good food. I need to train abs, and I need to do that for probably the next 6 to 12 months. I need to do that daily, most likely.
Yeah.
Right. But when it comes to life, we try because we get excited. It is so exciting to sign up to a new gym. I am a culprit at signing up to new gyms. My wife hates this about me. I just love gym hopping.
Yeah.
But never at a really good gym, so I don't think we're going to hop anymore. But I love it because as soon as I sign up to the gym, it's exciting. It's a new gym. It's fresh, right? There's new people. There's new machines. I get to try all this stuff. And I go a lot. And a lot of people do that. They get excited and they go a lot. But then, inevitably, the excitement will start to fall down. And then when that excitement falls down, that's when the discipline needs to take over. The discipline will take over. Well, as long as you've got a disciplined muscle, you can actually still keep showing up when you don't want to. Then once you've been disciplined for a season, then the habit will take over.
Yeah.
And then it's just showing up. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't need to think about it. You just always show up because it's part of the routine. It's part of your life. You always go to the gym or you always do the exercise or whatever you do. So I think it's a mixture. I think sometimes it's just freaking hustling. That's what we're in the zone of at the moment. We're just going really hard on the business and we're super focused and super locked in. And then sometimes we'll be in a bit of a pace.
Yeah.
Where we're still doing stuff, but we're not as locked in. We're not as dialed in. We're sort of taking a step back and we're having some margin time.
Yeah.
And then we get back into a rhythm and then we go again.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think that's solid advice. I've actually heard that, I guess, from mentors or people who I'd consider it as a mentor before, someone successful in an area. And it's been something that they've said, especially business owners. You've got seasons. There's times that you just have to knuckle down, and balance is very different in that sort of time frame. But you do have times where you might be able to jump on a plane. Was it last night you said if you could wake up tomorrow and just jump on a plane to Italy in first class, right?
Be awesome.
But yeah, that sort of balance, I guess, varies over time. And I think that's an interesting topic too, is when it comes to balance, is that people almost see it as like a 50-50, but I think you've definitely got to lean into different sides of it at times, don't you?
For sure. Yeah, 50-50. If you go into maybe you get away with that in a career. If you're working a job, potentially you get your work-life balance. If you're going into business, you're being an entrepreneur, that's just not going to cut it. I shared this last night. I said, if I give you this proposition and you don't take it, I said, you should probably just leave.
Yeah.
I said, here's the proposition. I'm going to give you absolutely nothing for 2 years and you need to shovel horse manure every single day for the next 2 years. I'm going to give you nothing for it. But at the end, I'll give you $1 million every single year for the rest of your life. So you can do whatever you want with that. And I said, who would take that? Who would take that? Would have you taken that, Michael?
Yeah, I think my hand went up. I think the majority of people were like, yep, I'll shovel the shit.
I'm cool with that. Right. And the people who didn't, I literally said, hey, if you wouldn't take that, leave.
Yeah.
I can't help you. Right. Having a business, a side hustle, doing something and working your ass off. This ain't for you. Go get a job, work your 38 hours a week and do that till you're 65. That's absolutely fine. And hopefully you love doing it even better. But if you want to hustle and you want a certain result, there's going to need to be some sacrifice along the way. Like I missed my mom's 50th birthday party for a business thing. I've missed weddings. I've missed birthday parties. And some people look at me like, oh, like, how can you give that up? I'm sorry. If you owned a cafe, let's say, and then you started up, you put $200,000 into it and you opened the doors. And then the first weekend that you were open, let's say your dad had his birthday party.
Yeah.
Would your dad expect you to close down your shop, lose 10 to 15 grand in revenue just to go to his birthday party? Probably not, right? Because it's a real traditional business. It costs a lot of money to run. But then when you get into investing or you get into side hustles, you don't treat it like that. You treat it like a hobby. And you're like, why am I not getting any results? It's like, well, it's probably because you're treating it like a hobby. You're not treating it like a real business.
Yeah.
Every business that I went into, I treated it as if it was a real business. And that's why eventually we got the proper results.
Yeah.
And I knew health and fitness had to be a huge part of that as well. Because if I wasn't feeling good up here, then I also wasn't going to be able to build my business. And physical health was always a big component of feeling good mentally.
Yeah. Perfect. I think that actually leads us into, one of the next questions I had, which was regarding in building businesses, what are some of the setbacks or roadblocks that you've faced? Maybe what were some of the failures that you've encountered? And then what has that built in you? Like, how did that shape you with a positive outcome, even though at the time it may not have felt like that?
I think most of them are always emotional. I learned from a mentor a while back, which was said, business is an intellectual sport. It's not an emotional experience. And I do my best to live through that. I'm not perfect at it, But there was a season in my business where I wasn't with my wife, I was with somebody else, and we broke up over a 2.5 year period, almost for like 17 times or something. It was ridiculous. It was on and off all the time. And that was an emotional roller coaster. And I'm so grateful for that experience, although it totally stagnated my business, like without a shadow of a doubt. Um, it allowed me to see, number one, what I wanted in a relationship. It gave me so much clarity. But also, every time we broke up, I would go and read relationship books. It forced me to go and become more emotionally intelligent. I think as men, we aren't the best at articulating our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I think about EQ, you got IQ, which is your intelligence, but then you've got EQ, which is your emotional quotient. And this is your ability to, one, articulate your emotions, two, manage your emotions, and three, harness your emotions. So emotional awareness is probably a really challenging thing for men to do. And the reason why is because if we just think about this from a logical perspective, if I'm in high school and I get broken up with, I go to my mates and I say, boys, she dumped me. And my mates go, have a beer. Let's go out. Let's party. And I say, that sounds like an amazing idea. Let's do that. Right. And we celebrate and we have fun. And that's how we process, little rabbit fingers here, process our emotions. So we don't open up. Whereas let's say women get broken up with, women go to their friends and their friends go, oh my gosh, Stacey, like he broke up with you. That's so sad. Like, oh my gosh, I had someone do that to me the other day. Like, tell me about it. Walk me through how you're feeling. And they practice being vulnerable and they learn to articulate their emotions. That's one way. So when it comes to guys, we aren't the best at it naturally. So I had to learn, how do I actually feel? Right? Oh, I feel guilty. I feel shameful. I feel sad. I feel angry. So learning how to have a better vocabulary around our emotions was something that I learned through that process. The second one is managing our emotions. This is something that men are sometimes, well, from my experience, I've seen men can be better at this. Usually anger is one thing which they have challenges, controlling if they have sort of a propensity to have more anger problems. And then lastly is harnessing your emotions. And this means if you're angry, you go to the gym, you go into a boxing session, you go into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you have an outlet and you make sure that you put it into something productive. Or if you're feeling a bit sad, a bit reserved, you go and journal and you utilize that to maybe go back into your childhood and your past to go back and see what happened back there as to why you are the way you are. So harnessing your emotions is usually the third thing you'll begin to work on. But again, don't try to work on all three of those. Just focus on one. That's all I did. I read books from Brene Brown about emotional intelligence, and then I started working with a kinesiologist. I saw a counselor. I think having a counselor or a therapist is a cheat code to life. Seriously. Some people, oh my gosh, I could never see a therapist. My wife and I have seen a therapist throughout our entire relationship. I think it was 4 or 5 months into our relationship. I said, hey, would you be cool if we get some counseling? And she was like, yeah, for sure, because she has a growth mindset. We were in a really good spot, but I'm all for preventative maintenance because there'll be a stage where we're super tired. We're not thinking about the other person's thoughts or their feelings, and we say stuff and it blows up, and it did. But luckily, because we had some therapy and some counseling, we were able to communicate effectively through those moments. So therapy is like one of the best things, whether you're struggling with mental health or whether you're not. I just think it's one of the best things that everyone should be doing. It doesn't need to be monthly, but just having someone you can go to talk openly about your feelings. There's not going to be any judgment, and their one role is to help you through it.
Yeah,
I think it's just an absolute cheat code to life. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think there was so much gold in that, mate. I had 2 or 3 things come up. One of the big things was, I think, obviously, when you pointed out, the difference between actually dealing with something, when you talked about harnessing the emotion in 2 ways, like whether it means you're actually going to journal about it, dig a little bit deeper, head inward, or it is actually exerting yourself. That's kind of the vibe with Daily Discomfort, with the run club specifically, right? It's like move, like get the boys running and then breathe, do some breath work and then connect, then talk about it. For guys, I think for a lot of us, if you sit us in a room in a still spot and we haven't exerted ourselves and we haven't got that energy out, it's very hard to then be able to sit down and articulate yourself or understand where these emotions are coming from there. And I think a lot of guys usually will just go straight to I'll just go work, or I'll just go hit the heavy bag or have a roll on the mats or lift some weights in the gym. they might use that point and they'll think that they're harnessing it, but they may not actually do some of the other things. Like they just kind of block out the emotion and they're like, just get it out. All right, let's put that in
Just
the
stuff
past
it
now.
down, mate. It's fine.
Yeah.
Guys are great at that.
There was actually a conversation I had last night when it came to the topics of like depression and anxiety, because there's different trains of thought with it. And I think the way that I spoke about this with Andy yesterday was the fact that there are guys, a lot of guys out there who are dismissive of the fact that some of these conditions are a thing. They're like, it's not a thing, you just feel down. My opinion on that has changed over time. In the past, I was like, yeah, you're just down, go exercise, like go do this, manage it. But I think the thing is, like you said earlier, when someone has a certain capacity, that is being influenced by the way they were raised, the environment around them, all these different things. I think I said in the conversation last night too, or if it was actually on the podcast yesterday, if you are a BJJ guy and absolute noob comes into the gym and the coach, what do you actually call like the coach in the class? Is there a particular name for them?
It depends on where you go. Sometimes it's professor. Usually it's professor, I think.
Okay. Say the professor says, hey, here guys, we're doing this. And this guy struggles with it. And you're like, just do it. Like I can do it. Why can't you do it? I feel like there's almost not empathy at times when it comes to some of these mental health conditions, right? But on the other end of it, I think there's a massive issue with people when it comes to emotions and when it comes to depression, anxiety, ADHD, sticking a label on it and going, oh, that's me. Like, that's why I can't do this. That's why I can't do that. And they use that label to kind of create a certain victim mentality, if you will. What are your thoughts? Because this was actually going to be one of the questions later on that topic itself. I guess when it comes to mental health and well-being, whilst having these aspirations to build like a massive business, or for someone who does just want to take a career path but wants to be the best in their career, how do they go about actually managing their emotional well-being? Because one of the things mentioned last night was there isn't a place for emotions at times in business, right? Like you can't get emotional on some of the decisions you make. If you're looking at something like crypto or Forex, whatever, like obviously a lot of money can be lost in that way. But even with business decisions, like if I'm on social media posting stuff and it doesn't get many likes, I can't be like, oh, no one likes me, my content's crap, right? It's just like, oh, that wasn't something that the audience enjoyed. Like I need to listen to that and then think about how I'm getting my message across, because it might not be the issue is with what I'm trying to help with. I just haven't said it in a way that was relatable. So going back to the question before I leave it aside there, how would you advise someone to manage their own mental health and well-being whilst they have these aspirations to build a business, really advance in their career, or maybe really commit to, training for a BJJ competition or an MMA fight or a run, whatever it may be?
There's a lot in that question, my friend. There is a lot in that question. I took some notes while you were asking it, but I think I'm just going to start with the empathy side of things, because there's a difference between sympathy and empathy.
Yeah.
And some people believe that I can't be empathetic to somebody if I've never gone through what they've experienced. Like if someone says, hey, my dad just passed away and your dad is still alive, some people believe, oh, I don't know how to be empathetic to that because my dad is still alive. I don't believe in that. I think you don't need to be empathetic to somebody. You don't need to have the same experience as somebody else to be empathetic. You just need to have the same feeling that they are feeling in the moment and be empathetic to the feeling. If that person's father has passed and they are feeling sad and distraught, if you have felt sad and distraught before, you can be empathetic to that and say, hey, I understand how you're feeling. I lost my grandma the other day and it was absolutely one of the hardest experiences that I've gone through. I'm not sure if it was as bad as this, but I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm here if you want to talk about it. You can be empathetic still to the feeling, not necessarily, you don't need to have the exact experience. I used to have panic attacks when I was going from primary school to high school, and throughout the first few years of high school, I had a lot of panic attacks. I didn't necessarily have sort of too many challenges with depression. I don't think I gave myself the opportunity because I was always smoking weed and numbing and doing pingers and getting drunk. I think maybe without those substances, I probably would have fell into a deeper depression, but I didn't give myself the ability. And also, I think when it comes to depression and the whole mental health, I want to be careful with what I say because I'm not a psychologist. And one statement that I do my absolute best to live by is this statement, which is, actually, I'll tell you a story before I tell you the statement. I'll give you a bit of a cliffhanger. So I was driving along the motorway. I gave Dom a call, my mentor, a call, and I asked him his opinion on something, which was a very controversial sort of topic at this point. And he said, well, what do you think about it? Because he didn't answer me. He said, what do you think? And I said, oh, well, as long as this, I'm not going to say the controversial topic, but he said, great. I said, well, what do you think? And he said this. He said, I don't have enough information to have an opinion on that topic. Which is such a great statement, because everybody, I feel like in Australia at least, has an opinion about absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Some people believe that depression isn't a thing, right? And it's just, you should just go have a workout and you'll feel better tomorrow. And then some people believe that, depression is a thing. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain. I'm probably more in that camp. And this is just from my experience, a chemical imbalance in the brain. But do I believe if you eat good food, do I believe if you do work out consistently and you get around good people, do I think it's going to absolutely help with depression? 110%. Yeah. I am in agreement. But that's my experience. I'm not a psychologist, right, after all. But that's from what I've seen someone go through depression and they start to be a bit more careful on what they eat and their workout routines and getting around positive people. I'll tell you what, if I go hang out with a bunch of negative people, and sometimes that's my family, I come out of that feeling shit and crap, right? So I am, even though I've done a lot of personal development, read a lot of books and worked on myself, I'm still prone to negative influence if I hang out with people like that for long enough. So if you are struggling with mental health, I would try your best to look around, look at your environment. If you're isolating, even though you're an introvert, right? Because sometimes we say, oh, but I'm introverted. I need my time by myself. I'm introverted. But if I'm feeling down, I need to go get around more positive people. So do your best. That's why obviously the run club that you run, Michael, is really good, because it's men who are going to talk about this stuff, not shun, but actually inspire you to want to go out and achieve big things. Because sometimes you tell your goals to your family or some of your friends and they start laughing at you. And I have never laughed once at somebody's goals. I think that's just the worst thing to do. However, I also say if you're hanging out with average, mediocre people and those people aren't laughing at your goals, you probably need bigger goals.
Yeah.
Right. But if you tell me your goals, I want to help. I want to find a way to help you achieve those goals.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the type of people that you want to be with. I found journaling has been really helpful. So especially if you're going in a business career or business journey, you're going to get rejected. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur or get into investing, you're going to lose money. You're going to have people around you that are going to say, man, that's never going to work. You're not the type of person that could make that work. And one of the best feelings in the world is the feeling of being able to prove somebody wrong.
Yeah.
That is one of the best feelings. Even my grandparents, loved them to bits. They said, oh, that online business, that's all a scam. Don't bother going near that. You should just go to school, go to uni, get good grades, and then you can get a job, retire at 65. And I'm just thinking, man, that is a nightmare for me.
Yeah.
But my actual nightmare is this. It is working a 9-to-5 job. Also getting a phone call, and then that person on the phone says, hey, I've got some bad news. Someone who you love is in hospital. You should probably come and see them now. I go to my boss. I say, hey, I need to go. I've got someone I love that I need to go and see. And they say, look, I get it. We really need you here, though. If you leave, that's fine, but we're going to have to replace you. And then because I need to put food on the table for my kids, I choose to stay, which means I choose to not say goodbye to somebody that I love, and I miss that last chance.
Yeah.
That is a nightmare for me, and it was enough of a motivation for me to dig my well before I got thirsty.
Yeah.
Which is a quote I am always thinking about, because we just don't know what's going to be happening in the future. We don't know. I didn't know that my mum's husband, after getting married for only a year and a half, 2 years, was going to get cancer, and then 9 months later, unfortunately, passed. And then I took her over to India and was able to look after her over there. I didn't know that I was going to need to do that. I didn't know that my nan was going to pass only 3-4 months ago, and the last opportunity to spend a couple hours with her was on a Tuesday night at midnight, where if I had a job the next day, I probably wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have had that final 2 or 3 hours with her.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. But I knew that something would come up in the future, which would require time and resources, which is what I was able to build. And I was able to dig that well before we got thirsty. So, and that's what I recommend everyone is dig your well before you need it.
Yeah. I think that was one of the things I wanted to bring up. And it's almost interesting because there's a bit of a paradox. Like, people might be in the mindset where they can be a little bit cynical, or maybe the word's like pessimistic about certain things that are happening in the world and their ability to create their own financial freedom and do all these things. Yet they won't be so pessimistic or cynical, and they may not predict the bad things that could happen to them if they stay where they are. The analogy that you gave last night of the dog sitting on the nail, like it's not painful enough for the dog to move. Could you actually run them through that analogy? That was a great one. Yeah.
For sure. So it's you're an old man sitting on the veranda, and this dog is sitting there and just whining like crazy.
Yeah.
And this young guy comes up and asks the old man, like, why is your dog always whining? And the old man says, well, he's sitting on a nail. The young guy's like, what do you mean? Like, he's sitting on a nail. Why doesn't he just get off the nail? The old man says, well, that would be smart, wouldn't it? But here's the wisdom. He says this. He says, it's the reason he's whining is because it hurts bad enough for him to sit there and to whine about it, but it does not hurt bad enough for him to get up and go and do something about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you might have someone in your life like that. They complain about their job, they complain about being overweight or being unhealthy, but they just never make any lifestyle changes to actually achieve a different result, right? And I was always thinking, hey, if I'm on a path and it's not leading me somewhere to where I want to be, I'm going to change. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to do something else. Why would I stay on a path which is taking me somewhere where I don't want to go?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been on a train and then you've missed your stop. You don't miss your stop and then be like, well, I might as well just keep going.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you get off and then you jump on the other side and then you get the train back to the stop that you missed. You don't just keep going because, it's too far gone now. But in life, we sometimes do that because it's easier to stay on a train that's moving rather than getting off, switching, pivoting, getting the rejection from people that we know, and then trying something else.
Isn't
crazy to
that's that sunken cost fallacy that Chris Williamson talks about, right? Yeah. Where you're, maybe you've exerted a certain amount of energy or money into a business, or a certain amount of time into, I don't know, some form of training that you just, for whatever reason, you no longer enjoy. Maybe a business is a better idea, or a career, and you're like, well, I may as well keep going. A better example is a relationship that is no longer fruitful. Like, you can really see a dissonance. Maybe it is beyond repair, but someone's like, oh, well, we've been, together 3 years. What's the point of breaking up now? It's a really good point to bring up. I've had it at times, right? I've had times I've put so much time into this, like I've just got to keep going with it. But maybe you just need to change the approach at times. But sometimes I think you've just got to cut the rope and, move on and move into another career, or maybe not straight into another relationship, but get out of one and audit your circle. Being aware of our time frame here, I just wanted to touch on something. I think we've covered so much so far, but just going to more into your personal life, not too deep, but I wanted to ask you a couple of questions regarding religion, family, and then also just a little bit of advice. So I brought this up with Andy on the podcast yesterday. What I noticed about a few people that I'm actually going to be talking with on the podcast, and then people within my circles, they're members of the Christian community. Now, what do you think it is about, not inherently Christianity alone, but having a faith or religion of some sorts? What do you think it is that helps people who are a part of that to succeed in business? I'm not saying that they all succeed in business. I'm sure there's people who aren't religious who do thoroughly well in business as well. But what do you think it might be? What characteristics of those people, or what is it about religion or community that helps someone to become a better business owner, a better family member, a better friend, a better leader?
I think it forces you to think about your values and make decisions that are aligned to them.
Yeah.
And one big thing that I've seen within the Christian community, and this could just be religion, is they always push you to better yourself so that you can then better other people. And Zig said this. He said that if you can help enough people get what they want in life, you'll get everything you want in return. And if you can go into business and life that way, I find that it's like saying this: if you go out looking for good friends, you'll struggle to find them. But if you go out looking to just be a good friend, you'll find good friends everywhere. So part of the Christian community and religion is always about that. It's about how much can I serve? And the reason why I want to always be improving myself is because I've got people I mentor and coach. I've got a beautiful family, and I want to serve them to the best of my ability. Now, if I'm not working out, if I'm not doing that sort of stuff, I'm just not going to be able to serve to the highest capacity. And it's hard because some people really have huge hearts and pure hearts, and they just want to give and they just want to serve, but they haven't taken a second to fill up their cup.
Yep.
And we all know the adage, you can't give out of an empty cup. You've got to take a second to fill up your own cup so that it is overflowing. And now that then you can serve and then you can give back. Like imagine if I jumped on this call, but I hadn't built a successful business. I hadn't read any type of books. I hadn't educated myself in personal development. I can't add much value.
Yeah.
But because I take the time to learn and to study and get around positive people, I can hopefully add a little bit of value.
Yeah.
To this podcast. So I think that's where the church or that community allows people to just serve and just show up for other people. And that's, I'll be honest, when I got started in business, I was not thinking like that. I didn't have a religious faith growing up. I was probably more agnostic, more atheist. And I just wanted to get started for money. I wanted freedom. It was all very selfish, if I'm being candid. And then as we started seeing a little bit of success, I started seeing other people win, and I started getting excited for other people winning. And that when it went from, PJ success to other people winning and succeeding, it is so much more fulfilling. I don't care how cringy it sounds. It is so fulfilling to see someone either up on stage or winning or making more money because you had a small impact to play in their life. Yeah. Right. Like it is such an amazing feeling. And you see it at the run club, right? Like someone comes a little bit overweight, maybe a little bit unconfident. We see it in jiu-jitsu all the time. I was talking to a guy called Andy about this, where, someone will come in off the street, lacking self-confidence, not the healthiest person. Fast forward 2 years, totally different person.
Yeah.
Because they've learned to manage their emotions. They've learned to be okay with getting freaking absolutely smashed and almost choked out every single day.
Man, it's a humbling sport, hey.
It's humbling.
Yeah.
Literally, it's one of those complicated. It's like playing chess. You're never good at it when you first start out. Like it is just, incredible.
Yep.
So when you see someone win and you just had a small part to play, I think it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, I love that. I think the only extension from that question would be more specific for a guy who's trying to be a leader, maybe not necessarily like running a run club or running a business, running a mentorship, but even just a good leader, to his partner, to his friends and his family, to some of his co-workers that he's working alongside every day. Where do you think a man needs to start his journey to becoming a better leader?
I mean, it's cliche, but if you were to rename leadership, you'd call it example. Leadership is just setting the example for people to follow. I don't believe there's different levels to leadership. You can lead from a title, but it's not very strong.
Yeah.
But I believe if you've got people who want to follow you, that makes you a stronger leader. But then you get to a point where you are leading other leaders to lead. And at that point, you'd be be an incredible leader at that point. But where you start is setting the example.
Yeah.
And no, I won't tell anybody to do anything that I myself am not willing to do.
Yeah.
Right. An example, whether that's showing up at the gym, eating good food, whether it is building a business or building success. Like if I say that I'm going to do something, I am going to follow through on that decision. And if I don't, and I consistently don't follow through on what I said I was going to do, that is going to affect my self-image. That's going to affect my confidence. It's going to probably affect my mental health.
Yeah.
Because building confidence is just about building evidence that you have the ability to follow through on what you said you were going to do in the first place. And if anyone comes to me and they say, I'm just lacking confidence, I said, look, it's actually a really simple equation. Go follow through on what you said you were going to do for a week, for 2 weeks, for 2 months, for 2 years. Come back to me and you're going to be a totally different person.
Yeah.
But set the example and learn how to lead yourself first. Don't go out and try to lead other people if you can't even lead yourself.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
So, and it's not easy. It's probably the hardest person to lead is to lead yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And I would even add to that, like what you mentioned earlier, it's like you don't go to someone about your health and fitness if they aren't healthy and fit. You don't go to someone about business if they don't have tangible evidence of a successful business. So why would you go to someone about self-leadership if they can't lead their own habits, right? Yeah.
Hang on, man.
I think it's one of the things, and you've probably noticed too, I found when I started, building up the run club, and I had people help me along the way. Like there was the time you brought your community over. That was awesome. Like across social media, it showed that we we're doing something here. I've had a few of the boys like Zane, Juan, one of the guys, James, that have helped me along the way to build it. But one thing it showed me about being a leader is that you can't do it all on your own. And any insecurities that you have will come to the surface. There's been so many times where I've felt my insecurities come to the surface. I'm sure you've had the same thing, and you're like, oh, if you've got that, level of self-awareness with it, which is key, you're like, oh, all right, maybe that's not an issue with them. That's just my subjective experience that I'm having as a result of this now.
Yep, hang on, man. Exactly. And it's always going to pop up. If you're ever going to do something great, and I always say this, if you look at anything that's been built by somebody and it's great, it was probably built by somebody that was tired.
Yeah.
So part of being a leader as well is willing to be uncomfortable and be, I guess, I was going to try to say be discomfort, but it probably doesn't really make sense. But it's part of the journey, right? Is being able to inconvenience yourself so that other people can prosper.
Yeah. I love it. Man, I've got one more question and then we'll wrap it up. And it can be a super quick one. If your business empire, if we want to call it, disappeared. Disappeared overnight, what is the first uncomfortable step that you take the very next day?
It depends if I lose my network at the same time.
Yep.
So if I didn't lose my network, I would just go to, the person in my life who has all the results that I want and ask him, hey, what should I do right now? I just lost everything. Because having a mentor, having someone in your life that can help you, that is probably the most important thing. If I lost everything, I lost my network, I lost the people in my life, I would go and find the most successful person that I possibly could in the next week or two. And then I would pick his brain and say, hey, what do you think I should do?
Yeah.
Because if we fast forward 5 years and that were to happen, man, artificial intelligence might be the way to go. Cryptocurrency might be the way to go. It might be a traditional business is the way to go. But times change, markets change.
Yeah.
So I would most likely go back into the online business world because that's what I know and that's what I do well.
Yeah.
And I'd probably build a business there. But the most uncomfortable thing I do is just get around more successful people. That's what I'm always trying to do, is just get around people that are doing better than me, because that's always going to push me to do better myself.
Yeah. I guess it's like environment is everything, right? And your network, they say your network is your net worth. Totally. One thing I want to just introduce to that too, and I know from the event last night, like you're not super pushy with your mentorship, pushing it on to people. But if people listen to this and they're like, hey, like I like this guy, I like how he's talking about things, and maybe they need a mentor, is there anywhere that they can find you? Is there a way they can get in contact? How can they come along to these events? Like, how do we introduce them to that environment?
For sure. So I prefer doing like one-on-one stuff.
Yep.
So I just recommend people reach out to me on Instagram, just PJ Coorey, Coorey. Reach out. I'm always happy to jump on calls. There's no promise that what we do is a good fit for anybody. We're very selective on who we take on, and we don't just say that, we mean it. If anybody wants to have a chat, feel free to DM me on Instagram, and more than willing to jump on a call with someone.
All right. Awesome. Mate, I'll end the recording now. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. To be totally fair with you, as I end the recording, I'm not sure if it's going to cut us off the chat. If it does fully cut us off the chat, I'm just going to send you a message. Okay.
That's cool, man. Go for
Mate, really appreciate your time. There was a ton of value throughout this whole podcast. And as I said before we got chatting today, really admire what you're doing with the community that you've built. And I'm always very appreciative of the time that you helped me with my community as well, by just giving it a bit of exposure and getting people to experience what we're trying to do here with Men.
Oh, good, man. My pleasure.
Awesome, mate.
Thanks for having me on.
Chat soon.
See ya.